Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the crucial blueprints of innovation and progress and distill them down to actionable knowledge for you. Today, we are cracking open one of the most influential texts in modern entrepreneurship, 0 to 1, Notes on Startups, or How to Build the Future.
It really is a foundational text, and its popular reception, I think, often misses the mark.
How so?
Well, people often approach it looking for incremental business tactics, like a simple how-to guide, but its true value is really philosophical.
Okay.
It fundamentally challenges how we perceive things like risk and competition and planning. These are concepts that are just, taken for granted in the business world.
Absolutely. And our mission today is to cut through that conventional wisdom, extract the most important nuggets on what the book calls vertical progress, and really give you a powerful shortcut to understanding Peter Thiel's philosophy on innovation. We're going to look at the world through a deliberately contrarian and, I think, necessary lens.
And we have to start right away with the core distinction that anchors the entire book. I mean, if you don't grasp this one concept, the rest of the arguments about, say, monopoly and planning, they just won't make sense.
Okay, let's unpack this. What is that foundational difference that separates a truly valuable, future-defining endeavor, a 0 to 1 effort, from, well, almost everything else?
It all boils down to the direction of progress. You see, most of the world is engaged in what the book calls horizontal progress, or moving from 1 to N.
1 to N.
Right. This is basically globalization. It means taking something that already exists and works, a successful technology, a proven business model, and then just copying it, or spreading it, or optimizing it.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you launch a chain of successful coffee shops across a continent, that's 1 to N. It's familiar, it's easier to calculate, and it's generally a lot less risky.
So 1 to N is essentially copying and scaling. It's relying on known patterns.
Exactly. It uses existing templates. Now, 0 to 1, that's vertical progress. That's true technology. This means creating something entirely new, something that has never existed before. It requires imagination. It requires invention.
So like the first typewriter.
The shift from using a typewriter to using a word processor, that was 0 to 1. The leap from having no internet search to Google's PageRank, that was 0 to 1. It's hard, it's non-linear, and it requires this deep, specific knowledge that didn't exist until you created it.
I really like the visual analogy here. 1 to N is like moving across a map, following known roads to a new place. But 0 to 1 is literally building the map itself.
Yes, building a whole new infrastructure where before there was just, wilderness.
That's a huge distinction because it forces us to recognize that most of these incremental improvements we see, even if they're profitable, are still just playing within the existing rules of the game.
And that really is the crux of the problem facing the global economy today. Horizontal progress is easy to measure. It's relatively safe, so that's where most of the capital and talent flows.
So that's not where the future comes from.
Exactly. If we want a future that is not merely expanded, more iPhones, more efficient logistics, but is fundamentally technologically better, we have to shift our focus to 0 to 1 thinking. That is the only path to genuine wealth creation and a break from stagnation.
So let's dive deeper into that. In an era that's just saturated with disruptors and game changers, how can a founder or an investor genuinely tell the difference between an incremental improvement, good 1 to N effort, maybe it's 20% better, and a true paradigm-shifting 0 to 1 step change?
The distinction really lies in the concept of a 10x improvement.
10 times better.
Right. True 0 to 1 progress doesn't offer these marginal gains. It offers an order of magnitude improvement that makes all the substitutes effectively obsolete.
So if your product is only, say, 10% cheaper or 20% faster,
it's still 1 to N. You're living within the existing framework of competition. A true step change creates a solution so compelling, or it unlocks a market so new, that customers don't even think about the old way of doing things anymore.
Can you give us a powerful, specific example of that 10x difference?
Absolutely. Think about personal transportation before and after the invention of the automobile. The early cars weren't just slightly faster horses, right?
They changed everything.
They redefined travel, commerce, city planning. Or another great one is the shift from physical film photography to digital. Digital wasn't just a little more convenient. It completely eliminated the cost of film, the time delay of development, the physical storage constraints. That's a 10x improvement, even if the early images weren't perfect.
So it's not just about optimization. It's about to find a new category of solution entirely. You're forcing the market to see a new paradigm.
Precisely. And the core lesson here for you, for the listener is that building the future requires the ambition to solve problems that no one else has solved, and solving them so comprehensively that you dominate the new space you've created.
It's invention over imitation.
Yes, even when imitation seems safer and faster in the short term, the goal isn't to improve the candle, it's to invent electricity.
And achieving that level of invention, that requires a specific and often, I imagine, a painful mental shift. Which brings us right to the heart of contrarian thinking. The book says the most valuable starting point for any unique business is found by correctly answering this one crucial question. What important truth do very few people agree with you on?
That is the ultimate filter for finding a secret. And a secret is a non-obvious truth that gives you the unique advantage you need to build a 0-to-1 company.
Because if everyone already knows it.
If the truth you hold is widely accepted, then that opportunity has already been priced into the market. Everyone is already competing for it. The truly valuable ventures are built on the rejection of common knowledge.
I have to say, I struggle with this concept a little. Because the world is full of people who hold minority opinions that are just wrong. Or they're just being stubborn. So what's the psychological block that stops most people from seeing these important truths?
It's primarily about safety and social conformity. Following the crowd provides this massive intellectual and professional cover.
Right, if you fail doing what everyone else was doing, you were just unlucky.
Exactly. But if you fail pursuing a contrarian truth, you're often ridiculed as an outsider or a fool. The human tendency is to seek validation for our ideas.
So the great companies are the ones that went against that.
Think about the early days of PayPal focusing on online fraud, or Facebook's initial decision to limit its network just to college students. These ideas arose from correctly answering questions that seemed totally irrelevant or even absurd to the majority at the time.
So then how do you distinguish a genuinely useful contrarian truth from simply being wrong or obstinate?
Well, obstinacy is just refusing to listen to evidence. A genuine contrarian truth has to be a hypothesis that you've tested, you've analyzed rigorously, and you are willing to bet your career on it, even when very smart, highly credentialed people are publicly disagreeing with you.
So it's not just a gut feeling.
No. It must be based on a clear analytical failure in the accepted wisdom of your industry. It's not enough to just be different. You have to be right about something fundamental that everyone else misses because they're trapped in groupthink.
The practical mandate for listeners then becomes pretty clear. Constantly evaluate the widely held, almost dogmatic beliefs in your field. If everyone says X must be done this way, that's precisely where a hidden opportunity might lie.
If you can prove X is incomplete or false.
Speaking of accepted wisdom and dogma, let's talk about a pivotal moment in startup history. The 90s dot-com bubble and its collapse in 2000 were cataclysmic, and they led to this profound, almost reactionary shift in how startups were built. What were the lessons the industry took from that, and why have they now maybe become a problem?
The collapse was traumatic, absolutely, and the industry swung wildly from this irrational exuberance to extreme caution. The book outlines 4 major, highly reactive lessons that were absorbed from the crash.
And these lessons corrected for the excesses of the 90s, but
when they became unquestioned dogma, they started discouraging the scale and ambition you need for vertical progress.
okay, so what were those 4 lessons that shaped the next generation of founders?
First, go small and incremental instead of big and audacious. The crash taught everyone that big, long-term plans fail catastrophically. So the goal became to start lean, focus on quick wins, aim for immediate monetization.
Makes sense as a reaction. What was number 2?
Be flexible and constantly iterate instead of having a fixed plan. Planning was suddenly seen as arrogant and rigid, especially in a tech environment that was changing so fast.
Okay, so pivot became the buzzword.
Exactly. Third, improve on the competition. Don't try to create a brand new market. New markets were seen as too risky, so you were told to stick to proven territory and just iterate better than the other guy.
And the last one.
And fourth, focus intensely on product, not sales. The new thinking was, if your technology is good enough, customers will just find you. The idea being that sales and distribution were unnecessary costs or even intellectual distractions.
On the surface, especially the emphasis on lean methods and iteration, these sound like really responsible, prudent business practices. Why does the 0-to-1 philosophy challenge them so forcefully?
Because when they're applied universally, they encourage one-to-end thinking, they encourage incremental improvement in crowded markets, while actively discouraging the boldness you need for true invention.
So?
Well, take the first lesson, going small. If you're trying to invent a new form of energy or launch a satellite network, you can't be small and lean. Those projects require massive, definite planning and huge upfront capital.
So that dogma just rules them out from the start.
It prevents you from ever tackling true, difficult technical challenges. And the second lesson, no planning. It ensures you never achieve a long-term, durable monopoly because you're always just reacting instead of building toward a defined, dominant future position.
So the ultimate lesson here is not that these practices are always wrong, but that they have become a kind of reactive fear, a self-imposed constraint that prevents the long-term vision and bold planning needed for 0 to 1.
Precisely. Entrepreneurs have to learn from the past, avoiding the irrationality of the 90s, but they must reject the resulting fear that leads to mere imitation and competition.
And that ambition you mentioned sets us up perfectly for the next section, which centers on the book's highly controversial take on competition itself. We are taught in every economics textbook that competition is the engine of capitalism. It drives efficiency, it benefits consumers. But 0 to 1 just stands this on its head. It suggests competition is counterproductive and that monopolies are actually superior for society. So define what a happy company is in this context.
A happy company is one that earns monopoly profits, and it does that because it has uniquely solved a problem that no one else can. They're happy because they are unique. They operate outside the pressure cooker of constant competition.
And unhappy companies.
Unhappy companies are the ones struggling with low margins and fierce commodity-driven competition. They're forced to fight for survival every single day, which is an inherently destructive state to be in.
Let's clarify the definition, though, because the word monopoly is so politically and legally charged. We aren't talking about predatory practices in the traditional antitrust sense, right? Like Standard Oil buying up railroads.
No, that distinction is vital. This is about a creative monopoly. It means owning a unique market segment entirely through superior technology.
You're just so good at what you do.
So good at what you do, your product is 10x better that no other company can offer a close substitute. The fundamental contrast here is between long-term vision and short-term survival.
Explain that.
Competition forces companies to focus on present survival, how to cut costs, how to beat a rival on a new feature, which is the very definition of one-to-end thinking. A monopoly, however, has the stability and the financial freedom to invest in massive, long-term, expensive, risky innovation, the 0 to 1 work. They can afford to think decades ahead.
But wait, I struggle with the idea that monopolies stay creative. Doesn't the historical evidence suggest that once a company achieves dominance, it just becomes complacent, bureaucratic, sluggish, because it doesn't have that fear of an existential threat?
That is the danger of stagnant monopolies, for sure. That's what happens when they stop innovating and just rely on regulatory barriers. But the thesis here is that a creative monopoly, one born from 0 to 1 progress, has a powerful self-interest in continuing that innovation.
So it's not a static state.
Right. If Google had stopped innovating on search, they would eventually have been surpassed. The question isn't whether they're pressured by direct rivals, but whether they're pressured by the potential of future innovators who might render their entire platform obsolete. The monopoly profits allow them to fund that defensive and offensive innovation constantly.
If monopolies are so great for innovation, then how do modern tech giants talk about competition? They always seem so keen to prove they're competing fiercely in dozens of markets.
And that is the core deception built into the system. If a company truly is a creative monopoly, think of a major social network or a dominant search engine, it has a powerful incentive to pretend it's competitive to avoid regulatory scrutiny.
How do they do that?
They do it by cleverly defining their market really broadly. They'll say, oh, we don't just compete against other search engines. We compete against Twitter for information and against car companies for advertising.
And what about the other side, the competitive companies?
A fiercely competitive company struggling in a low-margin market will do the opposite. They'll try to define their market as narrowly as possible to claim a temporary small monopoly status. They'll boast of uniqueness to investors, even if their position is totally indefensible.
It's all about framing and narrative control. The takeaway for founders seems clear. Don't chase existing competitive markets.
Competition is a zero-sum game.
Create a new one, no matter how small at first, where you are the only solution. Aim for creative monopoly from day one.
And that deception exists because our society just deeply idolizes competition, often to the detriment of real innovation and long-term profit. Competition is so often a distraction masquerading as a virtue.
How can it be a distraction? We're conditioned to believe that the constant striving to beat the other guy is what drives excellence.
It drives rivalry, which often results in this immense energy expenditure for minimal or even zero-sum outcomes.
So you're just focused on the other company.
Yes. When companies obsess over their competitors, their features, their pricing, their hiring, they lose sight of their long-term vision and the unique value they offer the customer. That energy is just wasted in a trench war.
And that energy could be going to real innovation.
If you spend 100% of your resources trying to improve a feature that your competitor already rolled out, those resources are not going toward defining the next category or creating a 0-to-1 breakthrough.
That analysis really reframes business battles. The book draws a powerful contrast comparing great art or literature, which are monopolies of unique creation,
Right. You don't try to write a better version of Shakespeare.
with these intense business rivalries where the energy spent is often just pointless, like the brutal price wars among early airlines, where nobody wins, but the consumer gets a temporary benefit.
Exactly. Those intense battles are thrilling stories, but they're often destructive to the companies involved. The company that ultimately wins is frequently the one that avoids that crowded fight entirely and goes off to build their monopoly fortress somewhere new.
So if competition is so bad, how do founders know when they've actually achieved monopoly status?
The signal isn't just market share, it's durable financial freedom. It's the ability to make massive lasting profits and reinvest heavily in the future without fearing imminent fatal threats.
So the intellectual and strategic shift is to move away from that competitive struggle, the battle for marginal gains, and focus entirely on defining and capturing a unique, defensible market segment that you and only you can serve. This focus on durability shifts our attention from immediate profits to long-term value. Traditional business wisdom prizes first-mover advantage, the idea that you have to be the first one to plant the flag. But 0-to-1 suggests the first mover is often just the pioneer who gets massacred.
And the real victory belongs to the last mover.
The last mover.
The emphasis has to be entirely on durability. A startup's value, particularly in high-growth tech, is derived almost entirely from its projected future cash flows, 10 or 15 years down the line, not its current revenue.
So the first mover just paves the way for others.
They take all the risks, they prove the market, and then they get swamped by fast followers who learn from their initial expensive mistakes. The last mover is the one who achieves a durable monopoly and captures all the lasting value.
So the goal isn't to be first, it's to be last, meaning you build the final dominant architecture of that market. But how do you make sure that dominance is durable? You can't just hope for it.
You build a fortress, and you use the 4 core characteristics detailed in the book.
Okay, what are they?
First, proprietary technology. This has to be 10 times better than the closest substitute, making the switching costs impossible to justify. It's not about patents, it's about deep technical differentiation.
Number 2.
Second, network effects. As more people use your product, it becomes intrinsically more valuable to every single user. It creates a self-reinforcing loop.
Like a social network.
Exactly. Third, economies of scale. Your business has to be designed so the marginal cost of producing the next unit approaches 0. This gives you increasing profit margins as you grow. It's the beauty of software.
And the 4th pillar.
And fourth, branding. This is often subtle, but a strong brand creates a powerful psychological barrier to entry. It signals quality, community, trust.
You mentioned PayPal earlier. Can you use that experience to illustrate how these pillars, especially network effects and proprietary technology, ensure that last mover advantage?
Certainly. PayPal wasn't the first online payment system, not by a long shot. But we achieved a durable network effect by focusing intensely on a very small niche, eBay power sellers and buyers.
So you started small.
Very small. And once that network reached a critical mass, every new user joined because all their trading partners were already there. That network effect, coupled with our proprietary, highly effective fraud detection systems, made us vastly superior to competing services.
You weren't just better, you were the only real choice.
We became the default choice. And that locked in our long-term position and made it incredibly difficult for anyone to displace us. That's the essence of building a long-term fortress.
So the practical mandate here is to look far into the future. Don't obsess over just getting to market. Focus on constructing a business model with these 4 pillars that guarantees your defensible dominance 10 or 20 years from now. This intense focus on planning and structure challenges a really deeply ingrained cultural myth, especially in tech. The idea that success is random or just based on luck. We're told the future just happens and founders just sort of stumble into a billion-dollar idea.
Yeah.
But the book argues forcefully, You are not a lottery ticket.
The pervasive belief in what the book calls indefinite progress, this idea that the future will be better, but we don't know exactly how and we don't have any specific plans for building it, is immensely damaging.
Why?
Because it encourages founders to be lean and flexible and just react to events as they unfold. To counter this, we need to analyze how people view the future, which the book breaks down into 4 critical quadrants of thinking.
Okay, walk us through those quadrants. It's pessimism versus optimism and definite versus indefinite, right?
Exactly. So in, say, 1950s America, you had definite optimism, the belief that the future would be better because we were actively planning and building specific things. From the interstate highway system to the Apollo program,
We had a blueprint.
we had a blueprint. Today, especially in Silicon Valley, we mostly live in indefinite optimism. We believe the future will be better, but we treat it like an annuity. We passively diversify our portfolio, we train in flexible skills, and we iterate without a long-term fixed goal. We expect progress to just happen to us.
And what about the pessimism quadrants?
Indefinite pessimism, often associated with Europe after 2008, is the belief that the future will be worse, but since you can't predict it, you just save cash and try to preserve what you have. And then definite pessimism, sometimes seen in highly centralized states, is the belief that the future will be worse, but since you believe you know it's coming, you can prepare for it. You build bunkers, you stockpile resources.
And the argument is that a truly successful 0-to-1 company requires definite optimism.
Absolutely. Definite optimism is the conviction that the future is not a random draw. It can be planned, it can be built, and it can be made better through conscious, intentional effort. Planning is viewed skeptically in our indefinite optimist culture, right? It's seen as rigid or arrogant.
Right.
But definite planning is crucial for 0-to-1 success. If you don't believe you can plan the future, you won't even try to build Monopoly Fortress that lasts for decades. You'll just aim for a moderate success and cash out quickly.
Okay, so if we assume successful founders are definite planners, why do so many of them deny it? They often attribute their incredible success to pure luck or serendipity when they're speaking publicly.
There are a couple of reasons for that. First, attributing success to luck is often just politically safer. It prevents scrutiny, it avoids generating envy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, and I think more importantly, founders recognize that even the most definite plan has to adapt to unexpected discoveries and challenges along the way. So they might emphasize the pivot or the serendipity in their retrospective narrative, but the reality is that the underlying success, that creative monopoly, was always built on a conscious, ambitious, long-term plan to dominate a new category.
So rejecting the lottery ticket myth means embracing a kind of radical intentionality.
That's a great way to put it.
That intentionality leads directly to capital. And this next section introduces the crucial mathematical reality of venture capital that every founder has to understand: the power law distribution.
The power law explains why venture capital operates completely differently from all other forms of investment, like mutual funds or real estate. Most events in life follow a normal or a Gaussian distribution. Most results cluster around the average.
The bell curve.
The bell curve, exactly. VC returns, however, follow a highly skewed power law. A very small number of companies, the outliers, drive the vast majority, sometimes 90% or more, of the entire fund's returns.
So if a VC fund invests in, say, 10 companies, 9 could be moderate failures or small successes. And only one has to be so successful that it returns 10 times the entire fund's capital.
That is the harsh, non-negotiable mathematical reality. For a venture fund to be successful, they don't need a portfolio of mild successes. They need 1 or 2 monumental, category-defining successes. The 0-to-1 company.
So the classic advice of diversification is actually a huge mistake for a VC.
It's a fatal mistake in venture capital. Diversification protects against downside risk, but a VC's goal isn't to minimize risk, it's to find the singular, massive outlier. If a VC spreads their money too thinly, they basically ensure they'll have 10 moderate successes, but miss out on the one opportunity that generates the exponential returns they need to justify the whole fund's existence.
Wow. That dramatically raises the stakes for founders. What are the clear implications for someone who's pitching a startup idea?
It implies that you cannot aim for moderate success or just being a good business. You have to pitch an idea that has a plausible path to becoming that exponential outlier, the creative monopoly that could return billions.
So if your pitch sounds like a solid, profitable, small business,
you are not a viable venture investment because you will never return the fund. You're forcing the VC to diversify, which is the antithesis of the power law mandate. This just underscores the necessity of aiming for scale and absolute dominance from the very start.
So don't spread yourself thin across mediocre projects. Focus intensely on one company that is built on a massive secret and has the potential to achieve that exponential scale.
That is the financial filter that drives the entire 0 to 1 ecosystem.
We've established that the success of a 0 to 1 company is driven by a definite plan to achieve a durable monopoly. But what exactly is the content of that plan? That transition takes us to the concept of secrets. The book says every company that achieves 0 to 1 success must be built on a secret.
And a secret, once again, is an important, non-obvious truth that very few people agree with you on. It is the proprietary knowledge or the unique insight that allows you to escape competition and create new value.
So if you don't believe in secrets,
If you believe there are no secrets, if you believe the market is perfectly efficient and all important knowledge is universally shared, then you're accepting stagnation. And you should probably go work for an established company. The very existence of a startup built on 0 to 1 progress is proof that secrets exist.
the search for secrets must be the first step of definite planning then. What categories of secrets should founders be looking for?
Well, we can distinguish between two main categories. There are secrets about nature. These are scientific or technical truths that the physical world hasn't revealed yet, like a new drug compound or a new approach to energy storage.
Things that require deep technical knowledge.
Right. And then there are secrets about people. These are social, organizational, or behavioral truths that society doesn't acknowledge. Perhaps about how people interact with technology or how markets are fundamentally structured.
What's an example of a secret about people?
Early Facebook's insight that people actually wanted to share their real identities online, which was totally contrary to the anonymous culture of the early internet, that was a secret about people.
If these secrets exist, why are they kept? Why haven't established institutions like academia or large corporations already found them and leveraged them?
They're often actively discouraged or ignored because of institutional inertia and intense specialization. Academia, for example, rewards small, safe contributions within existing disciplines, not massive, boundary-defying leaps that might challenge the entire field.
So it's a structural problem.
It's structural and it's cultural. Society teaches us to be cautious of anything that challenges accepted wisdom. This pressure for standardization and safety means that the biggest, most difficult truths are often just left untouched because addressing them means risking your reputation, your financial stability. If a truth is hard to find, the majority would rather just ignore its existence entirely.
That means the search for a secret is an act of intellectual courage. The practical takeaway is powerful. Every great company is founded on a secret. Founders should be actively looking for overlooked problems or flawed assumptions, because those institutional blind spots are precisely where new 0 to 1 opportunities are hiding. Moving from the intellectual foundation, the secret, to the human foundation, let's discuss the critical importance of getting the early team structure correct. Why is that founding moment, including all those difficult initial decisions, so decisive?
The initial structure is paramount because once a company is founded and capital is raised and employees are hired, it becomes nearly impossible to change the fundamental legal and relational agreements without, catastrophic friction or expensive legal battles. A flawed foundation, a mistake in the equity split, a fight for control will eventually doom the company, regardless of how great the idea or the product is.
So what are the key decisions that need to be aligned perfectly right at the start?
You have to align the three primary relationship dynamics within the founding team and the company structure.
Right.
First, ownership. That's who legally holds the stock and the equity. Second, possession, who handles the day-to-day management, which is usually the CEO. And third, control, who formally governs the company, typically the board and key investors.
And misalignment between those is a recipe for disaster.
A huge recipe for instability. For instance, if a technical founder has high ownership but very little day-to-day managerial responsibility possession, that leads to constant conflicts over strategy.
And what about co-founder relationships? Should founders be highly diverse in skills, or should they share a similar vision?
While cognitive diversity is useful down the line, co-founders absolutely must share a close personal history and a highly aligned vision. The co-founder dynamic is often likened to a marriage for a reason. When disputes inevitably arise, they're incredibly difficult to resolve.
So you need that pre-existing trust.
You do. The book stresses that the equity split should ideally be equal 50 or 50 or 333 to signal that every founding member is equally committed and to eliminate that early resentment over perceived unfairness, which is just lethal to a struggling startup. You need people who are both capable and who genuinely like working together.
The message is clear. Never underestimate the importance of those first decisions. A flawed foundation dooms a company, making the pursuit of 0 to 1 impossible.
And a strong foundation, built by aligned co-founders, is what supports a robust and dedicated culture. The book uses the very evocative phrase, the mechanics of mafia.
That's a strong phrase.
It is. It's not to imply illegality, of course, but to
Sure.
convey a specific type of organizational closeness, loyalty, and shared mission.
I understand the connotation.
Yeah.
It's about absolute loyalty and a tight-knit, almost family-like intensity.
Yeah.
Why is that intensity so necessary for a 0 to 1 company that's pursuing a contrarian path?
Because a 0 to 1 company is fundamentally contrarian, it's going to encounter immense resistance from the outside world. It's pursuing a truth that the rest of the world likely ignores or denies.
So it's an uphill battle.
An incredibly difficult, stressful, and uncertain mission. You need a team that believes intensely in that mission and is loyal to the team itself to overcome that external pressure. If people are just there for the salary or the perks or the job title, they will defect the minute the inevitable hard times hit. A strong culture acts like a powerful immune system.
So recruitment has to focus not just on technical talent, but on a genuine intrinsic alignment with the secret and the mission.
Absolutely. The goal is to hire people who not only love the mission, but who genuinely want to work together for the long term. You want to create a highly focused organization where people feel a proprietary sense of ownership over the company's success.
And that intentional focus on culture is what enables the company to execute the plan.
And to protect its secret. It acts as a critical, non-replicable differentiator against competitors who just rely on transactional employment.
This sounds particularly challenging in the modern era of remote and hybrid teams, where that in-person intimacy that fosters deep loyalty is just harder to achieve. How does this mafia concept apply today?
The principle of alignment and strong interpersonal relationships remains absolutely paramount. If anything, operating remotely requires even more intentional effort to foster that shared purpose and loyalty, because those incidental, casual interactions are reduced.
So you have to build it deliberately.
Founders must organize shared experiences, define the mission more clearly, and ensure that deep, explicit trust is built across geographical distances. Culture isn't a fringe benefit or a party perk. It is a critical strategic differentiator that you need to execute the plan and survive the difficulty of 0 to 1 creation.
Let's address the classic engineer's mistake, that deeply ingrained myth that product development alone guarantees success. If you build it, they will come. 0 to 1 stresses that mastering sales and distribution is just as vital as the product itself.
This is a fundamental correction that technical founders have to internalize. Selling is almost universally underestimated. It's often viewed as a necessary evil or some secondary function.
But the reality is,
No matter how technically superior your 10x product is, if you don't have a specific, scalable, well-defined plan for distribution and sales, you will fail. A truly great product that is poorly distributed is worth 0 because no one will ever know it exists.
I find the breakdown of the selling spectrum in the book highly useful here. It's about matching the distribution method to the product's value and price point. What are the key categories founders have to choose from?
You have to match the complexity and cost of the sales effort to the average transaction size. So at the high end, for products worth millions, say specialized enterprise software or multi-year defense contracts, you need complex sales. This involves deep personal relationships between executives and highly tailored solutions.
And moving down the price scale.
Moving down, for products worth thousands, you use personal sales, where a dedicated sales team manages a pipeline of leads. For products in the hundreds or lower, you rely on marketing and advertising aimed at mass adoption through media spend. And finally, for consumer products that can spread naturally, you use viral marketing, where the product's use inherently encourages sharing among friends.
And the failure comes when there's a mismatch.
Exactly. When a company tries to sell a complex, high-value enterprise solution using only banner ads, for instance, it just doesn't work.
Is it necessary for the founders themselves to embrace sales? I mean, the technical genius might recoil at the idea of being a salesman.
It is absolutely necessary. The founder has to be the first and most effective salesperson, both to customers and to employees and investors. They must champion the product, articulate the contrarian truth, and lead the distribution effort, even if they hire an extensive sales team later.
So the best founders are salesmen at heart.
Often, yes. And if the technical founder can't effectively sell the vision, the company just cannot survive those hard initial stages. Distribution isn't just a department, it's a co-equal, essential partner to product excellence, and the founder has to lead both.
Let's look at the ultimate product, the creation of new technology, and the relationship between humans and machines. The popular narrative is often one of complete replacement, where machines take jobs. The book, however, argues for radical complementarity.
The premise that computers should replace humans is indefinite thinking. It's a fearful zero-sum view. The question we should be asking is, how can technology enhance human capital to solve problems that neither can solve alone?
So the most valuable technologies are the ones that work with us.
They achieve 0 to 1 progress by complementing human abilities, rather than trying to fully automate or replace them. We need to focus on where the strengths of each intersect.
Where is this complementarity most clearly visible, and why does it lead to a 0 to 1 advantage?
Well, think about domains like finance or law or fraud detection. Machines excel at algorithmic analysis, processing massive data sets and spotting statistical patterns quickly and reliably.
But humans?
Humans, however, excel at handling exceptions, exercising unique judgment, managing complex communication, and dealing with the ambiguous ethical situations. PayPal's early fraud detection system is a perfect example of this.
How did that work?
The algorithm flagged suspicious transactions based on historical patterns, but then human analysts reviewed those flags and made the final decisions, particularly in edge cases. This hybrid approach proved vastly superior to systems run by purely automated processes or purely by human review. The combination was the 10x improvement.
This directly challenges the current prevalent narrative of job displacement by AI. It suggests we shouldn't fear replacement but seek integration, where the machine serves to make the human more efficient, creative, and powerful.
Precisely. We should be seeking business models where technology enhances human capital, creating value that neither could achieve alone. That is the definition of true technological innovation, not substitution, but synergy. This definite vision of partnership pushes us toward 0 to 1 territory, solving problems that are currently unsolvable.
We've established the principles. Now let's stress test them using a really high-profile case study: the catastrophic failure of the early 21st century clean technology movement. This industry had noble, definite goals and massive investment, but it largely collapsed. The book's analysis applies 7 crucial questions that every business must answer.
The failure of clean tech was a classic failure of execution and planning, not ambition. Many of these companies believed they were 0 to 1 simply because their goal was noble, but they skipped essential steps in building their fortress and planning their distribution.
So let's detail that checklist and analyze how the clean tech movement stumbled.
Okay, first, the engineering secret. Did they have a truly 10x technical breakthrough? Many clean tech companies were only marginally better and were still tied to legacy infrastructure and high manufacturing costs. They weren't definitively superior.
Okay, so they failed the first test. Number 2, timing. Was the market ready?
For solar, for example, the cost relative to fossil fuels was just too high for mass adoption without unsustainable government subsidies. The timing was wrong for widespread profitability.
Third, monopoly. Could they achieve scale or network effects?
Most clean tech was focused on hardware manufacturing, which is highly capital-intensive, easily copied, and immediately competitive. This makes a durable monopoly extremely difficult to establish.
Those 3 often determine the viability of the technology itself. What about the human and market sides?
Right. Fourth, people. Did the right team dynamic and mafia culture exist? Often, the teams were composed of brilliant scientists who lacked the necessary business expertise or alignment, which led to internal fractures.
Fifth, distribution. Was it easy to sell?
Selling massive industrial components like solar farms or specialized batteries to entrenched utilities is a complex, relationship-heavy process. It requires massive personal sales efforts, which was vastly underestimated by the technical founders.
Sixth, durability. Will the position last 10 years?
Because they often lacked that proprietary technology and network effects, they were easily undercut by cheaper, scaled competitors from abroad who simply copied their marginal improvements.
And the 7th question, which ties back to that contrarian thinking and integrity.
7th, secret. But this time, a different kind of secret. Did the company hide the true depth of its problems, either from investors or from themselves? Many clean tech companies publicly emphasize the grand world-saving mission while masking the critical distribution or margin challenges they faced. This lack of radical honesty about the true state of the business prevented them from correcting course.
Which of these 7 questions do you find is most often overlooked by technically brilliant founders who are so focused on the product?
Almost invariably, it's the market and business side questions. Distribution, which is question 5, and durability monopoly, question 6. A founder can build a beautiful technical solution, but if they haven't planned exactly how to sell it against massive institutional resistance and exactly how to maintain dominance against future entrants, the technology is essentially rendered worthless in the marketplace.
This serves as a powerful practical takeaway.
Mm.
Use these 7 questions as a non-negotiable checklist to vet any startup idea, ensuring you have a holistic, definite plan that goes beyond just a great product.
If you cannot answer all 7 questions positively and specifically, you are almost certainly building a 1 to N company, not a 0 to 1.
As we move toward the conclusion, we have to examine the individuals who managed to pull off this 0 to 1 creation. The book discusses the founder's paradox, arguing that founders who achieve this kind of success are often seen as eccentric, even contradictory figures who defy conventional corporate categorization.
Yes. Exceptional founders are rarely these cookie-cutter CEOs who look good on a magazine cover. They are often seen as possessing contradictory traits.
For example,
They have to be technical enough to grasp the secret, yet charismatic enough to sell the vision. They must be intensely private to focus, yet publicly controversial to command attention. They're often defined by their extremes, which the public then tries to categorize into these neat narratives of either heroism or villainy.
what's the strategic rationale behind this necessary eccentricity? Why can't a perfectly balanced, rational person achieve this level of breakthrough?
Because the very act of building a 0 to 1 company requires pushing a contrarian truth against the accepted norms of society and industry. And that task demands an intense commitment and an almost manic certainty.
So you need that outsized personality.
You do. You need a unique presence that commands attention and motivates a highly loyal team against conventional wisdom. If they were mild-mannered and just followed corporate norms, they would likely be swayed by common wisdom and never achieve the breakthrough. The unique personality is often necessary to convince people to join a difficult mission and protect the secret that the rest of the world dismisses. You have to be slightly off to see a truth that others ignore.
How can a company successfully nurture this unique founder energy without letting it become destructive or self-sabotaging? That seems to be a common failure point for eccentric leaders.
Governance and culture are the essential constraints. You need a strong foundation and a supporting mafia culture that keeps the founder grounded in the mission rather than letting their power become arbitrary. The board and the core team must be capable of both supporting the founder's radical vision and applying constraints when necessary.
It's a very tight balance.
It is. A structure must be built around the singularity of the founder, allowing their strengths to lead while mitigating their weaknesses. Entrepreneurs should embrace their unique strengths rather than trying to fit a standard corporate mold, but they also have to build that structure around their strength.
This entire deep dive has been a definitive call to action regarding ambition, planning, and creation. Let's conclude with the book's ultimate challenge to the listener: the choice between stagnation or technological singularity.
The central message really is one of necessity. Progress is not guaranteed. We cannot just assume that technology will advance indefinitely on its own while we focus on indefinite diversification. It has to be actively created through definite planning and hard work.
So we're at a crossroads.
We have reached a point where the choice facing today's innovators is profound. Do we choose to merely copy existing models, optimize marginal improvements, and accept economic and technological stagnation? Or do we commit to invention, find secrets, and build a future of true technological singularity?
That is a stark and difficult dichotomy, particularly when the path of imitation is so much easier and safer. If the goal is 0 to 1, what is the single most actionable step a listener can take today to move towards that kind of definite original thinking?
Start by finding a secret. That is the first step of all 0 to 1 thinking and the first act of definite optimism. Challenge an important truth that few people agree with you on. Look for the institutional blind spots, the technologies that are dismissed, or the social dynamics that everyone accepts as fixed. If you find one and you can defend it through rigorous analysis, you have the basis for building the future.
So the future of true innovation hinges on our willingness to reject safe imitation, to reject indefinite thinking, and to embrace the difficult but necessary task of definite planning built around a unique secret.
The commitment to the 0 to 1 challenge is not merely a business strategy, it's a statement about our faith in the future.
We've covered ground today, from the philosophy of progress to the mathematical reality of the power law, the necessity of creative monopoly, and the requirement for a definite, ambitious plan. The core takeaway remains that shift from destructive competition to creative monopoly, the rejection of the lottery ticket myth, and the intense, disciplined need for contrarian thinking.
It's a call to action to move beyond the fear that was instilled by past failures and to actively shape the world. The ideas in 0 to 1 are really a philosophy for how to engage with the world and ensure a future of technological progress. The future is built, not merely entered.
Peter, thank you for sharing these powerful insights from 0 to 1. This conversation will change the way entrepreneurs think about building the future.
My pleasure. The future isn't something we enter, it's something we create. I hope your listeners feel inspired to go from 0 to 1.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Find your secret, plan your monopoly, and start building. We'll see you next time.